They called me the data janitor, the gatekeeper, the woman who tidied up their messy spreadsheets and made their charts look pretty. For 8 years at Momentum Dynamics, I was the invisible architect, the one who built the entire data infrastructure from the ground up. My official title was Senior Data Architect, but in the gleaming, fast-paced world of New York fintech, I was just the person who said no when they wanted to move too fast. I was the one who quietly saved them from themselves. I stopped the launch of a credit product based on a flawed risk model that would have cost the company $40 million. I caught a single line of faulty code in a trading algorithm that prevented a catastrophic market error. Each save was invisible, a disaster that never happened, my name never mentioned in the celebratory emails that followed. My secret was the Atlas system. Not a company product, but my own creation, a complex web of validation and integrity checks that ran beneath everything they did. It was the silent guardian of their data, the foundation of their success, and they didn't even know its name. Then, Julian Croft arrived. He walked in with the kind of confidence that only comes from a recent feature in Forbes and a pair of $1,000 sneakers. As the new chief marketing officer, he was all buzzwords and disruptive energy. He spoke of AI-driven synergy and growth hacking, his words echoing in our all-hands meeting like a prophecy of a future I wasn't part of. He unveiled his masterpiece, Project Chimera, a $150 million global marketing campaign. It was to be run entirely by a new third-party AI platform that promised to revolutionize customer outreach. He stood before a slide deck filled with glowing graphs and abstract shapes. "I need speed, not analysis paralysis," he declared, his eyes sweeping across the room, deliberately skipping over me. I raised my hand, a small, quiet act of resistance. "Julian," I said, my voice steady, "the integrity of the AI's output will depend entirely on the quality of the data we feed it. Has there been a full diagnostic on the data sources?" He gave a tight, dismissive smile. "Amya, we appreciate the old-school diligence, but we're not in the business of gatekeeping innovation anymore. This platform is cutting-edge. It learns and adapts." He turned to the CEO. "We can't let our own internal bottlenecks slow down our momentum." Bottlenecks, that's what I was, not a guardian but a roadblock. I felt the familiar sting of being dismissed, but this time it was public. I glanced at my boss, Eleanor Vance, our chief data officer. She more than anyone knew the truth of my work. She knew Atlas was the only thing holding our chaotic data streams together. But she just stared at her notepad, silent. In that moment, I wasn't just invisible, I was being erased, so I did what I always do, I documented it. On my personal log, I noted the date, the time, and Julian's exact words. The plan didn't form all at once. It began as a seed of self-preservation, a need to create a record of the recklessness I was about to witness. The first step of my erasure came via a calendar invite. Project Chimera, role realignment. I was officially moved from the core strategy team to data validation support. It was a corporate way of sending me to the children's table while the adults talked business. My new job was to rubber stamp the data sets after Julian's New Wonder team had finished with them. His team was led by Leo Chen, a data prodigy fresh out of Stanford who spoke in tech jargon and treated the AI platform like a god. I watched from the sidelines, my access to the project's inner workings now limited. But they made one crucial mistake. They forgot that all data, every single byte they fed into that new AI, had to pass through my Atlas system first. They may have removed me from the room, but they left me in control of the plumbing. And from my console, I saw everything. The alerts on my Atlas dashboard began to light up like a Christmas tree. Red flags for data inconsistency. Yellow warnings for unverified sources. I ran my own deep diagnostic on the data streams feeding Project Chimera. It didn't take long. Within 48 hours, I found them. Not minor errors, not typos, 7 critical, systemic flaws. 7 legal and financial landmines waiting to be stepped on. I knew trying to tell them would be useless. They hadn't listened in a public forum, they certainly wouldn't listen to a private email from the data janitor. So I didn't try. Instead, I opened a new encrypted folder on my personal drive. I named it the Chimera Validation. And I began to build my case. The new team worked with a sloppy arrogance I had never seen. They dumped raw, uncleaned social media data into the system, ignoring the Atlas alerts that screamed about potential data poisoning. They accepted third-party vendor lists without cross-referencing our own customer database. I watched through Atlas as Leo Chen's team repeatedly overrode the system's automated cleaning protocols, all in the name of speed. I focused my documentation on the three most catastrophic flaws. The first was a classic case of sampling bias. The AI was being trained on customer data almost exclusively from wealthy, urban centers like New York and San Francisco. It was completely ignoring our core, most profitable customer base in suburban and rural areas. The AI was learning to sell sports cars to people who needed pickup trucks. It was a marketing campaign designed to alienate our loyal customers. The second flaw was data poisoning. They were feeding the AI raw social media sentiment. My Atlas system flagged thousands of instances of sarcasm and irony that the AI was interpreting as positive feedback. It saw a viral, sarcastic tweet mocking one of our products and tagged it as high customer engagement. Project Chimera was being built on a foundation of jokes it didn't understand. But the third was the most dangerous, a feedback loop. The algorithm was designed to reinforce its own early conclusions. A small, initial error in identifying a potential customer would be amplified with every new data cycle. The AI was creating its own reality, a data echo chamber that was drifting further and further from the actual market. It wasn't just wrong, it was becoming confidently, exponentially wrong. My personal files grew thicker every day, screenshots of the ignored Atlas alerts, version histories showing the injection of corrupted data, timestamps of every manual override performed by Leo's team. I was no longer just a data architect. I was an archivist of a corporate disaster in the making. 2 weeks before the launch, I made my one and only official attempt to intervene. I compiled a professional 20-page data risk analysis. It was calm, objective, and solution-oriented. It detailed all 7 flaws, complete with charts and projections showing the potential negative impact on revenue. I sent it to Leo, Julian, and Alina. The response came from Leo 3 hours later. "Thanks, Amya, we appreciate the input. The platform's proprietary algorithms have already flagged and adjusted for these kinds of anomalies. We're covered. We're covered." 4 words of pure, unadulterated arrogance. I forwarded his email to my personal account and saved it in the Chimera folder. Next, I sent my analysis to Alina directly, hoping her years of experience would make her see. She simply forwarded my email to Julian with a single, cowardly line, "FYI." The next day, I was summoned to a meeting with Julian and a woman from Human Resources. It wasn't about the data. It was about me. They used words like not a team player, resistant to change, and creating a negative atmosphere. Julian sat back in his chair, not even looking at me as he spoke. "Amya, your job is to support the team's vision, not to second-guess it. Stick to your dashboards." I nodded, pretending to take notes. I documented that too. The warning, the threat, the casual destruction of my professional credibility. When I returned to my desk, I created a new subfolder, Proof of Willful Ignorance. That night, I sent one final email to the entire team, copying compliance. "Following up on my data risk analysis, can you please confirm in writing that all 7 identified risks have been reviewed and accepted by the project leadership, and that you are proceeding with the launch as planned? This is for my final documentation." Leo replied within 5 minutes. "Confirmed, the model is validated." I leaned back in my chair and a slow smile spread across my face. That was it. That was the golden key. Written confirmation that they had received my warnings, understood them, and chosen to ignore them. I saved the email, the thread, the metadata. I backed it up to a secure cloud server and a physical drive I kept at home. The next morning, the official email landed in my inbox. My position was being restructured. My last day would be in 30 days. The Chimera launch was in 2 weeks. They were cutting me loose, thinking I would just fade away. They didn't realize I wasn't fading. I was focusing. That afternoon, I used my lunch break to go online. Patel Data Insights LLC was officially registered with the state of New York. My grandmother, who had run her own small grocery store for 40 years, always told me, the best revenge isn't getting angry. It's building something better. The final piece of the puzzle came 2 days later. An email from Julian Croft himself, marked high priority. It was addressed to me, CCing Alina and the head of HR. "Amya, your continued and unsolicited analyses of Project Chimera are disruptive. You are hereby instructed to cease all non-assigned work related to the project. Your focus should be on transition tasks only. Any further interference will be considered insubordination." I read it twice. Then I laughed. A real, out-loud laugh in the middle of the quiet office. He had just handed me a signed confession. A legal document proving he was not only aware of the risks, but had actively ordered me to stop pointing them out. I saved it, backed it up 3 times, and finished my day. The trap was set. The evidence was secured. All I had to do now was wait for them to walk right into it. The launch of Project Chimera was a masterclass in corporate theater. I watched the live stream from my new home office, a minimalist space I'd set up with the severance money I hadn't even received yet. On screen, Julian commanded the stage at a lavish New York tech conference. He was a silhouette against a massive screen flashing the words, "The future is flawless." "Today, we're not just launching a campaign," he announced, his voice booming with manufactured passion. "We are launching a new paradigm, an AI-powered, self-optimizing, error-free engine of growth." Error-free. I took a slow sip of my tea and glanced at my second monitor, where my Atlas system displayed the 7 critical flaws, still active, still bleeding corrupted data into his flawless engine. I had my own contract to review now, my first official client for Patel Data Insights. A small, cautious investment firm that wanted someone to actually check the math, not just admire the presentation. The applause on the live stream was deafening when Julian hit the big red button on a prop pedestal, officially launching Chimera into the world. The chat window exploded with congratulations. I closed the live stream. The bomb was live. The countdown had begun. My prediction was a 72-hour window for the real impact to surface. For the first 24 hours, the vanity metrics looked spectacular. Julian's team flooded the company's Slack channels with screenshots of click-through rates and social media impressions. They were celebrating the sound of the explosion, not realizing it was their own house that was blowing up. By the 48-hour mark, the cracks began to show. The first sign of trouble came from the customer service department. A leaked internal memo, forwarded to me by a sympathetic former colleague, spoke of an unprecedented spike in customer complaints. Our most loyal, long-term clients in places like Ohio and Texas were being bombarded with ads for luxury financial products completely irrelevant to their lives. The sampling bias was kicking in. The AI was treating our bread-and-butter customers like an afterthought. Then, social media turned against them. #Momentum Dynamics fail started trending. Customers were posting screenshots of the bizarrely inappropriate ads they were receiving. One viral tweet from a very influential tech blogger read, "Just got an ad from Momentum Dynamics that seems to have been written by a drunk robot. This is what $150 million buys you." The data poisoning flaw was now on public display. The AI, trained on sarcastic comments, was generating marketing copy that sounded like a parody of itself. The 72-hour mark was when the financial dam broke. The first sales reports came in. Not only had the campaign failed to generate new leads, it had actively driven existing customers away. The conversion rate had plummeted by 60%. The feedback loop flaw was now a death spiral. The AI saw the initial poor results from its flawed strategy, and instead of correcting, it doubled down, pouring millions of dollars into the wrong demographics with the wrong message. It was burning through its $150 million budget to accelerate its own failure. Wall Street noticed. An analyst from a major firm published a note questioning Momentum's sudden and inexplicable marketing spend. The stock, which had been stable for years, dipped 5%, then 10%. The company had lost more in market value in 3 days than the entire cost of the campaign. That's when the first call came. It was Alina. Her voice was thin, strained. "Amya, we have a situation." "I saw the stock price," I said calmly, taking another sip of tea. "It looks serious." "The models. They're not performing as expected," she stammered. "We were wondering if you might have some time to look at the raw data feeds, as a consultant, of course." "I'm quite busy with my new clients, Alina," I said, letting the silence hang in the air. "My firm's emergency consultation rate is $3,000 per hour, with a $50,000 retainer, paid in advance." I heard a sharp intake of breath. That's incredibly steep." "It's the market rate for cleaning up a $150 million mess on short notice," I replied. "Send the engagement letter over, I'll review it." I hung up. 2 hours later, after the wire transfer had cleared, the second call came. It was Julian. The swagger was gone. His voice was a panicked whisper. "Amya, we need you. We need you here now." "I've just received your engagement letter," I said, my tone all business. "I'm on my way." Walking back into the Momentum Dynamics war room was a surreal experience. 3 days ago, I was an outcast. Today, I was their last hope, The room was a pit of despair. Leo Chen was staring blankly at a screen filled with plunging red lines. Eleanor was pacing by the window, chewing on her thumbnail. And Julian, he looked like he had aged 10 years. His face was pale, his expensive hoodie rumpled. They all fell silent as I walked in. I didn't sit down. I walked to the head of the massive conference table, opened my laptop, and connected it to the main projector. The room was bathed in the cool, clean interface of my Atlas system. The problem isn't the data feeds, I began, my voice cutting through the tension. The data has been compromised for weeks. The problem is you chose not to listen. I projected my original data risk analysis onto the screen, all 7 flaws detailed in black and white. Let's start with flaw number 1, sampling bias. I walked them through it, my voice calm and clinical, explaining how their own AI had systematically alienated their most valuable customers. Then I moved to the next slide. It wasn't another flaw. It was an email. The email from Leo with the subject line, Ray Data Risk Analysis, and the body text, confirmed, the model is validated. A low groan escaped from someone in the back of the room. You were warned, I continued, my eyes fixed on Julian. You were given a detailed, professional analysis of every single thing that is currently going wrong. You had all the information you needed to prevent this, but you had a different priority. I clicked to the final slide. The entire room went still. Projected in massive letters for everyone to see was Julian's high-priority email. To Amya Patel. From Julian Croft. Subject, your unsolicited analyses. You are hereby instructed to cease all non-assigned work related to the project. Any further interference will be considered insubordination. I let the image hang there, a monument to his arrogance. I looked at Julian. The color had completely drained from his face. He understood. He finally, truly understood. I hadn't just come back to fix their data. I had come back with receipts. I turned back to the room, to the stunned faces of the team that had pushed me out. My retainer covers the initial diagnostic, I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. The $50,000 is for the work I've already done. Now, let's talk about the price for fixing it, because what comes next will be limited and it will be very, very expensive. The silence in the war room was absolute. It was the sound of careers ending. Julian stared at his own words on the screen, a digital epitaph to his ambition. Leo Chen looked physically ill. Eleanor wouldn't meet my eyes. I disconnected my laptop. The diagnostic is complete, I said to the room. The patient is bleeding out. My initial retainer is exhausted. If you want me to stop the bleeding, we will need a new contract. One for emergency remediation. I will draft it tonight. I packed my bag, turned, and walked out without another word. They were no longer my colleagues. They were clients, and they were about to learn just how much my expertise was worth. The next morning, before I had even sent my new proposal, a call came from a number I didn't recognize. Is this Ms. Amya Patel? The voice was sharp, female, and held an authority that cut through the phone. This is she, I answered. My name is Catherine Reed. I'm a managing partner at Venture Catalyst Group. My heart skipped a beat. They were the lead investors behind Project Chimera. We received an anonymous but very detailed 30-page analysis of the data infrastructure for the Chimera campaign. It appears to have been written by an expert with intimate knowledge of momentum systems. Was that you? My work speaks for itself, I replied carefully. Indeed, it does, she said. It also paints a picture of gross negligence. We're convening an emergency board meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. We are formally requesting that Patel Data Insights attend as an independent auditor to present your findings. Your standard fee will be met. This was the moment the game changed. It was no longer about me consulting for a company in crisis. It was about me presenting evidence to the people who held the company's fate in their hands. We'll be there, I said. The boardroom was a chamber of ice. The entire executive board was present, their faces grim. Julian was there, but he looked like a ghost. I sat on the opposite side of the table, next to Catherine Reed and her legal team. I wasn't their consultant. I was her ammunition. Let's dispense with the apologies, Catherine began, her voice cold as steel. Project Chimera has already resulted in a market cap loss of over $200 million. That's before the class action lawsuits for misuse of customer data begin. Ms. Patel, please walk us through how this happened. For the next hour, I did just that. I presented my findings not with anger, but with cold, hard data. I showed them the ignored alerts from the Atlas system. I detailed the flawed models. I ended with the 2 emails, the one from Leo confirming he was ignoring the risks, and the one from Julian ordering me to stop. I didn't editorialize. I didn't need to. The data told the story. When I was finished, a board member from Chicago looked at Julian. Is this accurate? Did you instruct Ms. Patel to stop her analysis after she warned you of these risks? Julian opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He just nodded, a tiny, pathetic gesture. Catherine Reed didn't miss a beat. We've seen enough. Julian Croft and Leo Chen's employment is to be terminated, effective immediately. Their gross negligence has voided any severance clauses in their contracts. And just like that, the architects of my dismissal were gone. Then Catherine turned her attention to the rest of the board. Now, we discuss how momentum dynamics makes us whole. We are prepared to take legal action that will bankrupt this company. However, we are offering an alternative. She slid a single-page document across the table. It was a list of terms. You will issue a public press release acknowledging the systemic failures in your data governance. You will assume full financial liability for the campaign's failure. And, she paused, letting the weight of her next words sink in, all future projects involving customer data, company-wide, must be independently audited and certified by a third party of our choosing. The CEO paled. That seems excessive. We choose Patel Data Insights, Catherine said, looking directly at me. A minimum 3-year, non-negotiable contract. Ms. Patel will have full access to all systems and absolute authority to halt any project she deems a risk. Someone at the end of the table choked. This is unheard of. What's unheard of, Catherine retorted, is a $150 million project being launched with this level of incompetence. Ms. Patel's firm proved it can identify risks your entire organization missed. Her oversight is now our insurance policy. It's either her or our lawyers. The board had no choice. The negotiations took another hour, but the outcome was never in doubt. Patel Data Insights was no longer a one-person startup. It was the newly crowned and very powerful independent auditor of a multi-billion-dollar fintech company. As we packed our briefcases, Alina approached me, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and regret. You won, Amya, she whispered. I didn't want to win, Alina, I said, my voice even professional. I wanted to do my job. You wouldn't let me. I turned and walked away, leaving her alone in the wreckage of the company she had failed to protect. The next few weeks were a blur. The press release from Momentum Dynamics sent shockwaves through the industry. My little firm was suddenly the most talked-about data consultancy in New York. I started hiring. My first 2 employees were brilliant data scientists I knew from previous jobs, both women who had been sidelined and overlooked, their careful work dismissed in favor of flashy presentations. We were building something new, a place where diligence was the primary virtue. The real healing wasn't in the victory or the money. It was in the work. It was in sitting in my own office, leading my own team, building a culture of truth. We were creating a place where no one would ever be called a gatekeeper for simply doing their job right. 6 months later, I was on a Zoom call with the new executive team at Momentum, approving their first major project launch since the Chimera disaster. My firm's seal of approval, a small, PDI-certified logo, was now a mandatory part of their process. It was a symbol of a new era. After the call, I leaned back in my chair and looked out my window at the New York skyline. They had called me a data janitor, someone who just cleaned up messes. They were right, in a way. 7 flaws, $150 million, and the careers of 2 arrogant men, all because they forgot the most important rule of any organization. Never, ever underestimate the person who cleans things up. They're the only one who knows where all the bodies are buried. And sometimes, they're the one holding the keys to the entire building.